Oh, yeah, we're a glutton for punishment, we are. Hello, back again for the TGT podcast, our weekly show in which we chat about an Arsenal match, typically at the weekend. Typically, it's a therapy session, and we've got a hell of a one for you today. 24 hours after Arsenal, just over, or just actually under 24 hours after Arsenal have been beaten 3-0 by Liverpool. We were joined by people to have a chat about that. And talk about some hilarities of the fallout from obviously a ridiculously poor result from the Arsenal perspective. So I'm going to stop waffling now because we should probably just, get this over and done with. Joined today by two wonderful people. First off, making his way all the way over from the Atlantic, it's our good friend from Miami. It's John. How you doing, mate? You well? You muted. You're unmuted now. I've done it.
I said well is such a relative term, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm doing better than the team is right now. Let's put it that way. So that's positive.
Yeah, no, fair enough, mate. Fair enough, son. And also, it's been a little bit of a while, but one of our regulars that I know a lot of you know, and it's always a pleasure to have him on. My brother from Roosters. It's Ola. How you doing, mate? You well?
Bro, it was bad yesterday, man. But I'm alive. I'm breathing. I'm happy. Yeah, good health, all of that. But Arsenal, yeah, roller coaster. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it, mate. And welcome everyone in the chat box. Of course, massive thank you for everyone that's tuning in. We're aware that there's a game going on right now that's got quite a fun scoreline right now. I know I've just jinxed that. But we'll see how that concludes. We will be on, of course, when that finishes, and we'll have a better idea of how the league's looking, of course, after that point as well. And I just want to look at, obviously, what you guys are thinking about the game, how you're feeling a day after the match. So let us know in the chat box. We'll get some of your comments going as the boys are talking. But starting off with you, Ola, we'll go in reverse order, mate. I know you said you're not feeling too great, it's fair to say, this morning. But just give me your raw reaction to yesterday's result.
Yesterday, I thought the first half. Going in at halftime, I was kind of happy. Like, all right, we didn't really do a lot in the first half. I mean, Liverpool could have been out of sight with 3 or 4 goals in the first half. Were it not for them not having their shooting boots on, because they just kept shooting off target, but they had really, really good chances. So I thought, we were fortunate enough, and maybe we did work hard enough to try and at least go in at halftime, but at 0-0. But when you look at, you always knew, look, the way the chances that Liverpool were getting, they were never going to stay the same. It was up to us to tighten up a little bit more and try and get control of the game, and we didn't. We lost control of the midfield, misplaced passes, unforced errors, not looking after the ball. There was just so many individual mistakes, and on top of that, people, to me, just showed that people didn't. I felt like the players didn't care, and that hurts me a little bit because of the occasion for Rocky Road Castle yesterday, and for his anniversary and stuff. I just thought it was so lackluster for a game of that magnitude, irrespective of where we are in the league. Yeah, it was very, very disappointing. But this is something that we've seen all season. It's not the first type of game. And these players have got this type of mistakes in them, and they've got this type of games in them where, they don't respect the opposition, they don't do the basics properly, and it always comes back to haunt us, But yeah, horrible result yesterday. We at least, I felt we could have done with the 3 points, considering the result that happened with, say, Spurs and Chelsea. But
Yeah.
You know what? It wasn't meant to happen. So a bit pissed off, but here we are.
Yeah, you and me both, mate. You and me both. It is always the way that when other teams drop points, Arsenal are the worst team at taking advantage of opportunities. Always, every single time. I should stop tweeting them out because after Chelsea lost, it was like, if we beat Liverpool, we'll be 6 points off top four, lads. Like, this is
I thought you would
great.
have known this by now. You've been jinxing Coquelin his whole career, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as soon as he leaves for Valencia, mate, he goes
gets
and
to go.
scores.
His whole Arsenal career, he jinxed it.
I know. You see, I'm saying Cedric Screamer now as our TGT thing. He's going to leave us and he's going to score a long shot in the first game he plays for someone else. Man. He's going to do it at the Euros for Portugal. That's what he's going to do. John, obviously the reaction to the game was, I mean, you've seen it. You've been on social media today and last night, I'm sure. It was really... I don't want to call it hyperbolic because obviously the performance was so poor. I know me and you. Okay, go on. I'm going to let you go for gold on how you think the reaction to the game was measured or not.
Well, okay. So first off, I think it needs to be premised with the fact that it's been like there's been this frustration bubbling, right? And like we've been doing well, and then we do poorly, and then do well, and then we do poorly. So there's this like kind of dialectical tension between people who are ready to just start throwing their hands up and ready, and we could just we can go on Thursday and like it feels and do really, really well. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, we still have this European trophy to fight for until we get knocked out of Europe. And then it's going to be a full collapse. So I think this was a taste of what to expect if we get knocked out of Europe. But to a way more greater order of magnitude if we do. So, like I said, going back to my initial point, it's premised on the fact that there is this bubbling tension going on. And it was, I don't want to say it was like foreseeable, but I don't want to say it's hyperbolic. I do kind of want to say it's hyperbolic because it kind of is, because we still have a European champion. We still have a European trophy to potentially win. Whether you believe we have a chance or not, I mean, the reality is we do have a chance to win that trophy. Whether we will go out and win it
after Thursday,
yeah. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But it was not a fun game. It was not a fun game. It was not a fun result, and it was the manner in which we got injuries to important players. We it was not good for the morale of the team and the morale of the fan base. So, regardless of whether I think it's being there, it's a little hyperbolic. It's definitely not fun. It's definitely not a performance that anyone needs to or should accept, regardless of the fact that we have a European game coming up on Thursday. I don't think that's really an excuse for the way that we played. And this chasm of quality that we saw between the two was really, really, and it's kind of this is what I feel happens with Arsenal recently. We'll get into this like kind of good run of form. And, everything seems to be going okay. And then all of a sudden we get kind of like brought down to reality about where we are in this development, in this process, and as a team. And we can laugh at Liverpool and their recent form and stuff, but this is a team that has been playing under Klopp with a very unified vision for a long time and has demonstrable success from it. So I'm not really sure what people expect when we play a team like Liverpool and a Klopp side like that. Maybe they thought because they hadn't been doing good that we're, not as.
All right, John, let me throw you a question because I feel like
please.
I just want to press you on that because obviously I think people will turn around and say that maybe that's an excuse to say that we were coming up against a Liverpool side. Liverpool are without Van Dijk, they're without Joel Matip, they were playing with Phillips and Kabak at the back, and arguably we should have tested those guys more.
We should have, and let me just put it. I don't want to misspeak and try to justify why we played the way we did.
No, I'm only pressing you.
No. I appreciate it. And it really comes down to it's not an excuse, right? It's not an excuse that they had like less players that would have been beneficial for them to win this game or that they've had throughout the season. It's really just looking at the side and going, even with their kind of substitute players that they're using, this team as a whole understands what Klopp wants to do, and that's something that is relevant. Whether that kind of tips the scale and now all of a sudden it should justify, us beating them or whatever. There's no guarantees in the Premier League. You can't just because and we as Arsenal fans should know that more than anyone on the planet that when a key player is out of a rival side, the chances dramatically increase that the team's going to beat us. It's just I don't know why it is. I'm thinking back to like even we can go as far back as like Man United. Remember with like Rashford and all those guys, like all of a sudden
Rooney.
Rooney. It was like this is just this is just what happened. So it's a little hyperbolic, only in so far as it's kind of like, yeah, that I kind of saw this one coming. But not like Ola said. I didn't like the way that the players kind of approached the game, especially given the circumstance with Rocastle, and it was supposed to be this, beautiful homage to him. I was hoping that people would, especially like Aubameyang or someone would, who's supposed to be touted as this club legend, would get out there and make something happen. And it just wasn't fun at the end of the day. And you never want to lose at home like that. So, meh.
Yeah, fair enough. Ola, when we look at kind of, because I don't want to get too bogged down on the game and the specifics of the match, because I think that what happened during the game was very obvious, is that Liverpool were the better team on the day. We didn't have a lot of our players. We played horrifically, had no outball whatsoever. The tactics that we used for setup, I do want to talk about some of the team selection points from the coach, because I think some of them were really questionable. After that West Ham game where Aubameyang and Lacazette played together, I really didn't kind of understand why we left Aubameyang on the pitch for as long as we did against West Ham and took him off too late. But then to see him start him alongside Lacazette again after that performance, I thought was really, really odd. Did you have a lot of questions about Arteta's team selection during the match?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've been questioning Aubameyang playing as much as he's been playing, because I think there's one thing he hasn't tried yet, and he's done it to Lacazette all season. Bring Aubameyang off the bench. Maybe they could just create a different mindset to where he could play himself back into. It's just something we've not really seen him try with Aubameyang. And for Martinelli being on the bench, should have started, considering how the game is looking now, and the energy that Martinelli was always going to bring, because we know Aubameyang, the defensive duties, well, he does them, but how about pushing back their defense in the first place to reduce our defensive duties, push them back. And Martinelli is a master at doing that. You saw when he came on in the first second, he rattled the whole defense. It's like they thinking, he came on and caused chaos. And that's something I thought we could have done with from the start of the game. Even leaving it for as long as it did is something that really, really bothered me, especially at 63 minutes. It really, really bothered me. We are 0-0. Klopp is about to bring on Jota, and we're bringing on El Nene. Like, what's going on? And the same guy Klopp brought on came to score 2 goals. So we had to go 2-0 down to bring on a threat in Martinelli. And these were the questionable things that that I saw the manager do yesterday. It just bothered me, because to me it looked to me like he ran out of ideas. He didn't know what to do. He gave up. And it's not every week we're going to do a West Ham. This is the Premier League. You can't be giving teams a 2-0 lead, a 3-0 lead, and expect to claw it back. Like, this is the Premier League. It's ruthless, and you make mistakes, we get punished like that.
In the chat, Bradley Costello says Aubameyang should have been up front, and the ball should have been played in behind at every opportunity, because Kabak is just a bit like Mustafi, slow and clumsy. They had Lacazette in their pocket all game. Gary Hardy says you could see why Aubameyang started. The space behind Trent was there, but we couldn't get the ball in behind, and Partey tried a couple of times, but it didn't come off. I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room for me. I feel like that it didn't matter what we did during that game, that we didn't have the personnel on the pitch to do what we have done successfully a lot this second half of the season. And I know that it's something that I talked about at length yesterday. I say it's an elephant in the room. It's rather the elephant that wasn't in the room yesterday, because for me, without Granit Xhaka in this team, like, I don't know if for me, it can only be the most stubborn people in the world now that can't see, for me, how integral he is. And I know that some people have turned around and said, and have changed their mind a bit and gone, okay, look, I'll hold my hands up. He is integral. But then the follow on to that, which I think is fair of them to point out, is to say that, right, but he shouldn't be. Like, our play shouldn't be integral. on Granit Xhaka being there, and I get that, and that is very, very true. Trust me, I'd love to upgrade on the guy, believe me, but I think it would cost us a hell of a lot of money to go out and try and find someone who's going to do what Granit Xhaka does better and without those mistakes. But let's focus on the point, John, because without someone to collect the ball, and also the fact that we played Ceballos, we had no way to take the ball from the defence into the midfield and bring it forwards, because Partey, who can do that whilst on the ball, was covering so much for his partner's just ineptitude throughout the game. Dani Ceballos was so poor. He completed 54% of his total actions during the game. It was ridiculous. And I don't really get how we can kind of turn around and say that, look, Arteta's tactics weren't right this game. But I don't think we had the personnel on the pitch, even if we had the tactics, to enact those. However, what I would say as a caveat is I feel that if he'd have picked El Neni over Ceballos to start with, we may have had a better chance because he's a better passer for me. I know he's very passive, but he just keeps the ball going. He passes accurately. He actually would have been able to play a couple of passes, whereas Ceballos was trying stuff that during those moments, we're passing the ball forwards a bit, but he was losing it all of the time. So is it as simple and is it a big enough excuse to say, look, we didn't have Granit Xhaka in this game. We couldn't enact the tactics that we wanted. Is that good enough? Is that acceptable? Or is it to say that, no, even without Granit Xhaka or with Ceballos next to Partey, we should have been playing better in this game?
Well, so this is one of the biggest criticisms I have about selling Granit Xhaka. And it really comes down to who do you replace him with and then who is your backup, all right? Because first of all, minus the last couple games, Xhaka is since he's been at this club, almost the first name on the team sheet every single week. He's always available. He's rarely injured. He can play. He's like a robot. I've never seen a more vital player in terms of vitality, or seldom seen one. And the reality is okay, yeah, you can upgrade him, right? And you will. And I'll answer your question in a second, but I just need to preface it with this. You can upgrade him, but you're gonna need to upgrade whoever's the backup midfielders, right? Because this is what you're going to get when he's not playing. So that player better be able to play every single game, or we're going to get performances like this. And then where's that going to get us? You're going to need the depth to rotate, and we don't have that in the midfield. And right now, Xhaka is a great player for us because he allows Arteta to enact the kind of plan that he wants to do in a way that he gets. And he does it week in, week out. He's always available for selection. So, yes, I'm okay with upgrading him. And yes, I think that even without a player like Xhaka, you still need to be able to kind of adapt to that. And even without him, you're going to need to be able to fix. But it comes down to what you said. It's the personnel. Because I don't think El Neni, think about it, without Xhaka, who's our main midfielder, and it's going to happen where you're not going to have your main player that you want in position. What do we have on the bench that's going to fix it? That's going to be able to change anything? It's either a situation where Arteta is not able to get it through these other players, or the quality is just not there, or a mixture of both. But it's not as easy as just switching Xhaka out for another player. And this is what I've been saying. And when he's not, people are like, oh, but let's see what it's like when he's not playing. But like this is what you get. This is because this is the backup we have. And this is what you have to look forward to. Maybe you'll get an increase in quality when you upgrade him, which by definition, an upgrade is better than what you currently have. But you're going to miss out when that player is not playing, and they're not going to be able to play every single game of the season. So either, and I'm coming back to my original point, either you need to upgrade the backup options in midfield, or you need a more comprehensive plan about how you're going to approach it from a tactical perspective. And I don't think we have any of that right now, which is very concerning going in, and why I think either the backup or an upgrade on Xhaka. If there's an upgrade on Xhaka, there needs to be upgrade in the backup as well.
This is what Gary Cardi says. I don't think Xhaka would have changed much. We have had plenty of bad team performances with him in the team.
Sure, but I disagree. I think that he absolutely would have. He would have allowed us to keep possession, and when I say keep possession, I mean that he's able to actually pass the ball into the attacking third, where we had less shots ever than we've ever. Or like it was some crazy stat. It was like it's some astronomically low number of shots that we had. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it was really poor from an attacking perspective, and it's not a coincidence that Xhaka wasn't on the field and we struggled to get the ball from defense to attack. It's not. I get people want to complicate football a lot, but it's really that simple sometimes. And in my opinion, that's exactly what was happening.
It really frustrates me around that when it's just categorically kind of just pushed aside saying Xhaka would have made no difference like that. It does frustrate me because I can't get my head around the point that I just think that view comes from an agenda standpoint of just constantly wanting to downplay Granit Xhaka's influence and actually how good he is as a player. Mm-hmm. He would have had a difference as the points that you highlighted, John. He's a better passer than everyone on that pitch. He is a better passer, and I mean everyone on that pitch is a better passer than everyone. Arguably the best passer in our team, maybe, and I'm looking about a consistent passer. And I get the point that he makes mistakes. Don't get me wrong, but no, there's not really anyone in that Arsenal team that doesn't. And across the 5 seasons that he's been here, he's made 8 errors that have led to goals. And if you actually look at, go on, John. Go on.
His mistakes aren't from his passing, really, though. It's not. His mistakes come from maybe getting caught in possession, or he could be a little bit slow in the turn and things like that, which are going to happen and increase in frequency with the amount that you're on the pitch, which he's on more than any single player we have on the pitch. So sure, a player who plays more minutes is going to potentially make more mistakes, and that's not to say that he doesn't have the mistake in him. But the things that we could have helped, the things that he could have brought to the table that would have helped us yesterday were the things that he's good at, that he doesn't make the mistakes in, like passing the ball progressively, which people like to say he passes sideways and backwards, but I don't know if you've been actually watching him ever this season or ever at his Arsenal career, but he's one of the best progressive passers and has been statistically in Europe for like a good amount of time. So we don't have to turn it into a Xhaka debate, but you hit the nail on the head. And I think that really the things that he would make mistakes on aren't the things that would have hurt us yesterday.
Yeah, it just really frustrates me because it just shows a blindness, in my view, a really kind of blinkered perspective of something when you're not taking it into account. It's just, he allowed us in every single point when we tried to get out from the Liverpool game yesterday is we couldn't escape. We couldn't pass. We couldn't bring the wide men into play. And when we did, Lacazette took a heavy touch and we lost the ball. When Pepe tried to run away, he was caught in possession because we couldn't put him away in the right areas. He had to come much, much deeper and collect the ball and try and run, which against Liverpool is a death sentence. Like we just we could not do what we needed to do in the game. And that was really frustrating. And it worries me ahead of Slavia Prague on Thursday, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on, that are we going to be able to play our game? I know that they aren't as good as Liverpool, but they're no mugs. They're still a very decent side that have knocked out some big teams in the competition this year. Ola, when we talk about kind of the defense has come up a few times. Now, I do think that actually for 40 minutes in the game, or maybe even slightly longer, but before their first goal, I thought we actually defended quite well. We had absolutely nothing in attack, absolutely nothing. But the defense was keeping us in the game. Like we were making blocks, making clearances, and they had one clear-cut chance from James Milner in the whole of that first half. And then the cross happens that leads to their first goal. And you have the smallest man on the pitch. And I'm thinking flashbacks of Raheem Sterling against us, Man City. And once again, it's the smallest guy on the pitch getting up and heading the ball. Now, I spoke to someone the other day about this, someone who's a coach, and I asked him about kind of the crosses that go into the box and can you blame these defenders when these small guys jump in? And he says that if the cross is good enough, it doesn't matter. You can have the tallest centre-backs in the world. But if he manages to get the cross in it lands on the person's head by a looping cross that dips at the right time, there's nothing you could do. And I think the cross was excellent. But the more to the point about the defence of the game was that when we went 1-0 down, we went kaput. The mentality went. Any kind of chance of us even getting back into the game, the very slither of any hope that we may have gone, just went. So that mentality is a problem. And the Gunnosaurus, I think, in a chat earlier on said, Arteta's lost the dressing room. Do you think that was a sign of, in any way, of these players kind of losing that connection with the coach or not following coach's instructions? What do you think about that? It's like the mental side of things.
I mean, nobody was saying that a couple of weeks ago when we drew against West Ham and clawed back 3 goals, that the players weren't playing for him. If anything, that showed that the players were playing for him and clawed back that 3 goals to get a draw in that West Ham game. But the problem is, and you know, you could see Arteta saying it all the time, you can't keep giving that amount of lead away. And I agree with you. In the first half, I thought we did enough to stifle them and keep it at 0-0. And I did say earlier on, you know, we were lucky going into the first half at 0-0. And I thought we our attacking players started needing to push Liverpool back a little bit, and we didn't do that. We lost control of the midfield, and that's how they got at us. And going back to that goal that you mentioned earlier on with Jota heading, this is my problem. Is the cross was good, but as a centre back, what you then need to do is adjust your body shape. So situations like that with Jota don't happen, and Holding couldn't do that, and we could see what happened since he got dropped. I think it was that Sterling goal. That was the last time we saw him, and he's come back in, and the same thing has happened again. So there's still a lot of work to do. I don't know who's going to do that work. Whether it's going to be Arteta, whether the club's going to bring somebody else in. I don't think the club can even afford to do that at this point. But for me, we just didn't look after the ball well enough. We pondered on everything, and we just kept losing control. The amount of unforced errors that we had was so significant, and it's I never thought I'd say this, because I've said from the day Xhaka did that thing and disrespected the fans, and threw down the armband and that, I thought, boy, he's gonna take something big for you to get back into my good books. But I recognize what Xhaka does in the team, and it's no mistake that every single manager since Wenger signed him has picked him and played him, and they all say the same stuff about him. He must have a wand of a foot in training. I don't know what he does there to convince them to. I don't know what he does in training to convince them, but they all say the same thing. So there must be something there. They can't all be lying. But at the same time, when you look at the size of our club, the size of Arsenal Football Club, we shouldn't be depending on one player like that for the for the way we play. I understand we in transition, and we're trying to build a project, and that's where we are at the moment. So we're gonna have to make do with players like Xhaka, until we're able to reach the promised land. I don't know how we're gonna pull it off, but hopefully someday we get there. Coming back to the game, I just feel our attacking players definitely could have done so much more. But for me, it's not doing the basics and not looking after the ball. For me, is part of the reason why we really lost this game. Nothing to do with maybe Arteta. They're not playing for Arteta, because I don't think that's the case. I really think the players are still in there. When I think it'll be fairly obvious when they start to do that. When they're not playing for him no more. It's going to be fairly obvious. But we look at the players that were absent in that game yesterday. These are the players that have been playing out of their skin for Arteta, in ESR, Saka, Martinelli, alongside Lacazette. But we didn't have those guys yesterday, and I don't want to use that as an excuse. But they've been integral part of us getting good results and good performances over the last few weeks. So, yeah, I still think the players are in there with Arteta.
So I think that I'll tell you, I think it's to suggest that we've lost the dressing room. When you look at the difference between the end of Unai Emery's tenure and what we were playing like and what the players were like, you never saw the players coming out and supporting Unai Emery. That's for sure. You didn't see a single one of them. And I think there was a good question in the chat talking about Unai Emery, saying Dominic Harry was asking, say, the experienced manager Unai Emery couldn't get more, and that kind of point about experience comes up with Arteta a lot. Yet we had a guy that won 3 Europa Leagues, couldn't get a better ring out of these players either, and we were dropping down the table, and that's where we are. I want to kind of look at more beyond the game, and look ahead and look at where this puts us and what this means, and not even just like the next week. We'll come on to Slavia Prague a little bit later on in the show, but I want to talk about kind of the context of Arsenal right now and the expectations, because I think that that's something that's come out of this game, is very much like Arsenal have lost more league games in the Premier League than any other Premier League season, that we're on course for one of our worst Premier League finishes, etc. And obviously the growing calls for the manager to be replaced, John, are intensifying. Whilst I still am very much inclined to turn around and be like, look, I don't really understand the point of view yet because I don't think there's enough evidence, and I think that we need to see more. And I still want to kind of sit here in a year's time and then assess the situation after. It's not blind faith. It's looking at what's happened and looking at the context of the situation. Just me feeling I don't think there's enough time yet at the moment for me to have a proper assessment. But we are ninth. And then there's discussion, and then there's this thing that's really kind of bugging me at the moment, and that's why I want to pick your brains about it. So maybe you can be my therapist for the evening.
Sure.
Because this whole idea saying, like, Arsenal should be above West Ham. Arsenal should be above Everton. Arsenal shouldn't be ninth. We're better than this squad's better than ninth. And I talked about this on yesterday's Raw Reaction show, and I said, if you look at the whole, and I'm saying like our starting 11, if you look at our best 11, I'm keeping max 6 players. Like, I'm saying that at least 5 of the players in that starting 11, I'm saying you're either questionable or I'm getting rid of you. And the 6 players that I was talking about, and I didn't put Martinelli in because I don't think Martinelli's like quite ready to be that starting 11 starter consistently week in, week out just yet. I'd throw him in now because of the situation.
I mean, maybe he is. We don't know. That's the thing.
Maybe he'll prove me wrong, and then we'll talk about that as a different time. But like, I'm looking at kind of what my starting 11 is, and where I'd play Martinelli would be probably still on the left at the moment, and Emile Smith-Rowe for me is my left-sided player with Ødegaard at 10. So looking at that, I'm keeping Smith-Rowe, I'm keeping Xhaka, I'm keeping Partey, I'm keeping Tierney, I'm keeping Gabriel, the centre-back, and I'm keeping Bukayo Saka as my 6. I'm not keeping either of Lacazette or Aubameyang at the moment. I'm not keeping any of those. I'm not keeping any other of the centre-backs. Rob Holding for me is we signed him to a contract for depth. Like, he's decent, but he's not an Arsenal starting centre-back for me. Yeah. None of the right-backs. I know Cedric's squad, we love you all. But again, for an Arsenal where we want to be, Cedric's not going to be our starting right-back. I think Leno, I've backed the guy, but he's made a lot of questionable performances and decisions this season. And I don't think he's like safe, is what I'd say, which is why I've not included. He's not safe for me. You look at the forwards, Pepe. Yes, if we signed him for 20 million with 18 goal contributions last season, I might have been like, 20 million quid, that's a decent deal. But he didn't. He cost us 72 million quid. And for what we're getting from him, it's not enough for me. I can't deal with that. And Ødegaard I didn't include because he's not our player. So that's why I didn't put him in there. So that's 6 players. And then I'm thinking, I'm looking, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an Everton fan, of a West Ham fan, of a Leicester fan, of all these teams that are above us, and ask them that same question. How many of your starting 11, for the position that you're in, for the targets that you've got, how many of your starting 11 are you keeping? And in my mind, they're keeping a hell of a lot more players than I've suggested that I'm keeping for this Arsenal team. And that makes me go, you know what? Even on paper, I don't think this squad is that much better than 9th, to be honest. But I'd love to get your thoughts.
I mean, that's a very interesting kind of thought process. And, the reality is I think they wouldn't keep it for a different reason, that they would keep theirs more players than we would for a different reason than we want to get rid of more players. I think, and it comes down to ambition, I think. And, we're a club that is, unlike West Ham, used to a certain degree of success, and we've been promised a lot about what to expect with this club. We have the highest ticket prices in the entire country, and there's this expectation, given the amount of money all around the world that fans pay to Arsenal and that they make through their endorsement deals and all that stuff, that we are going to be more than a mid-table team. And yeah, I think West Ham, remember, they went through this really tumultuous period, even when they were rebuilding the stadium, when they built their new stadium. And it was like, why are we doing this right now? Instead invest in the squad, let's actually win something. And right now they've kind of shifted towards actually being really serious about trying to get into a position where they're going to be winning a lot more accolades. And the problem with us is that, yes, we have a lot of recent success in the terms of FA Cup and top 4 and Champions League up until recently. And I don't even really think you can call it recently anymore. And, we haven't won the leagues in over a decade, way more than over a decade. I think we're pushing on the second highest drought of a league title that we ever had. I think the last one was like 71 to 89. So there's a significant amount of pressure for us to actually go and if you went to West Ham, for example, and you said, all right, you're going to keep all those players, what are your goals? I don't think their goal is to challenge for the league, right? That's what we want. We want to be in the top 4. We want to challenge to win the league eventually. And that's where our sights are. I think more like earlier than that, our sights are just to get back into the Champions League, because I think that's our kind of short-term goal, get into the top 4 or get into the Champions League. I think they have a similar one in that regard, but with us, it's a little different from everything I mentioned. There's this underlying deeper kind of pressure to do more than just make the Champions League. We did that for 20 years straight. All right. Just getting the Champions League with a sprinkle of an FA Cup here or there. All right. We want to challenge as a club for those major titles. So that's where I think a lot of this frustration is coming, in part from that. Now, I actually agree with your assessment regarding the players that you would keep and not keep. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done with the squad if we're ever going to not just make the top 4 or make Champions League qualification, but actually push to win something significant, especially in the climate that we have right now with the Klopps and the Pep Guardiolas and the money flying around in the Premier League right now. And as Ola was talking about on the podcast when it was just us before we went live, the what am I trying to say? The volatility of the Premier League right now, where I'm right there with you. I cannot imagine another season in recent memory where there were these kind of giant killings going on within the Premier League left and right. It feels like every other day there's a big team is losing out points to someone that's fighting a relegation battle. And maybe someone can come up with the stats on that and show how it's not anything different. It's just my recollection of what I've seen in the Premier League. It seems to happen a lot more now. So, it's a weird climate in the Premier League right now. And there's some weird stuff going on. And there's a lot of money flying around and there's a lot of ambition flying around. So, if we're going to be serious about it, yeah, I think we do need upgrades on players like Xhaka, as much as I think he can get us to that top 4 position, although he hasn't historically done it. I think he can. With a I have this mug that I got from the FA Cup, which is Aubameyang's goal in the most recent FA Cup, and it's sweet.
It's a great mug,
but it was like downhill from him. He got named captain, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. And if we had pre FA Cup Aubameyang, the feelings I had about where we could go in the future are a little bit different than him as a player. It's totally in doubt. Leno, totally in doubt. Lacazette, totally in doubt. Sometimes we'll get a good player, sometimes we won't. There's players that are consistently good. Your Gabriels, your Tierney's, like you mentioned, the ones that you kind of elucidated. And hopefully we can keep an Odegaard because he looks like the kind of real deal. And Martinelli, maybe he comes in and does a job. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done to the side if we are going to meet the expectations that we have as a big club like Arsenal. And I think the first step is to get in that top 4 Champions League position. And then the next step is really what the pressure is, because there is this underlying need to push towards something more than that. And I think that's what really differentiates us at this point from your Evertons and your West Hams. And which is why right now there's so much pressure on the manager and so much question about, I understand bringing a manager who isn't experienced at all really in first team coaching at this level.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom. Can I just piggyback off something John just mentioned there as well? When you have the amount of players that you'd get rid of in the team, I agree with some of a lot of the players that you mentioned there as well, and the ones that you said you're going to keep. And keeping 6, all right. And this is first 11. You got 6 consistent performers here in a game, and every game you carrying 5 passengers that at any time they've got mistake that can lead to a goal in them. Yeah. We're never going to get anywhere. Never going to get anywhere with carrying this. Maybe we can get away with 1, maybe 2 on a good day. Maybe you can get away with. You can't carry 5, 6 passengers every game, and we do this week in, week out. So, I agree with you on them names that you mentioned there as well.
I think what I want to ask you, Ola, on as well is kind of the next gripe I've got. And I know that me and you differ on kind of the Arteta standing as well. So it'd be interesting to get your thoughts. The whole thing about where we've come since the end of the Arsene Wenger tenure. So this idea that obviously we're regressing, then we're declining, and I agree in that sense. I think Arsenal are certainly in that position where they're going backwards. And you've got the end of the Wenger, and we know the last few years of that going backwards, dropped out of the Champions League. We won a couple of trophies within that time, which is great. But league position wise, we decline. Emery comes in. gets us to fifth in a very strange season, and missed out on top four through what I still would consider his own ineptitude and silly, ridiculous rotations. And obviously we got to the Europa League final. And then one of the worst performances we've seen in a final. We then go into the following season. He completely loses the dressing room and gets sacked. The position where we're completely out of everything and we're not looking like we're going to progress. We're dropping down the league. We can't get a win. We could barely score a goal. Arteta comes in and we win an FA Cup off the back of that horrifically poor start to the season. And we end, I think, was it 8th? I think we finished at the end of last season, and won the FA Cup to get back into Europe, of course. This season, we sit in, obviously, right now, I believe we sit in, is it 9th or 10th that we're in right now? So let me double check quickly. We're 10th, so Villa have gone above us by 2 points. So we're currently 10th with Leeds joint with us on 11, but 6 goals behind us on goal difference. So the idea is that obviously we're still declining and we're going backwards. The league position's getting worse. My gripe with this kind of theory, this context around Arsenal going backwards and keep going backwards and we should sack the manager now because we keep going backwards, is that everyone kind of is looking in a blinkered view of just Arsenal, and it's just Arsenal they're looking at right now. And I think that people are kind of forgetting everyone else and forgetting the situations of everyone else in comparison to us. Because whilst we've been recruiting exceptionally poorly over the last 6 to 10 years, and it's only in the last year and a bit that we've started to see a change in how the team's being put together and built, everyone else in that time has been able to improve their squads, gradually get better and improve. And they're not making the same mistakes that we're making. They're not wasting the 561 million quid between 2015 and 2019. And they're gradually getting better. And the issue that I have with saying that after just a year of Arteta to chuck him out now is that I feel like the graph is like going down. I agree with you, but it's that point where it's starting to turn. And I feel like Arteta arrested the slide of what it would have been had we have continued to regress under Unai Emery and with the bad signings that were made with Raul Sanyehi at the club. And that we're now, and some people are willing to throw away the signs that we are actually starting to change. The market, you look at the last summer window, you look at January, Partey, Gabriel, top-class players in 2 key positions. January, get rid of loads of players, bring in on loan because we weren't able to do anything else. But the player that we do bring in, we identify a great player in Erdogan, and you look at the impact that he's had. For the first time, I've had confidence that the club's moving in the right direction in regards to our recruitment. And so when you go round and that kind of graph that's gradually turning, I just want to see in a year's time if that is the case. Now, I might sit here in a year's time and we're still 10th. And we've brought in, say, 3 or 4 decent players this summer and we're still 10th. At that point, I'll turn around, as I've said, because it's not about being blind loyal to this guy. In a year's time, if we've not progressed at that point, I'll be like, look, we need to ask some questions now. We need to probably think about this process not working. But do you see what I'm saying there? And do you think that there is people maybe missing the context of all of the other teams around us and how they're changing and how actually we're just kind of trying to arrest the slump that has begun under Wenger and continued under Emery and is now trying to be stopped by Arteta?
I think you mentioned you mentioned the key word there, which is arresting the slide. For me, is more of stemming the bleeding. But what Arteta has not done is heal the wound. You know, he's stemmed the bleeding, but it's not healed the wound. And a lot of the times, the wound opens back up again and reminds us how painful, you know, it is to go through this process. And look, there's a massive amount of work to be done when Arteta came in, and everybody saw it. And the January we had, getting rid of all the players that we had on the books, and essentially not playing a game for us, and being a pain in the dressing room. And this is why I think the dressing room has been a better place for Arteta to kind of to do his work. And for me, it's more of the backing, because I still didn't think, we're getting rid of players in January, but is he going to get backed to replace those players with quality players in the summer?
But that's not on Arteta, is it? That's on the ownership, isn't it? That's to say.
Oh yeah, that's on the ownership. But this is Arteta coming out, because we don't hear a lot from the ownership. Arteta's come out and said these owners are going to back him.
Yeah.
And a lot of things are non-negotiable when it comes to with him and the owners, because he's already outlined what he wants. So I'm taking his word for it, saying that these owners are going to back him in every way possible. I've not really seen it yet. Yes, we got the party and the Gabriel deal through, but a lot of the other things were free deals and loans and stuff. But if we can then push a little bit more in the summer and do substantially better than what we did in the summer, then that will show me that there's something that that they see in the manager to try and get him to the level that he wants to be at, because obviously it has a pathway. I'm not seeing it. I've already been on here and literally said, look, if Arteta don't get us top 4 or at least win the Europa League, I'm Arteta out. And my stance hasn't changed because of the inconsistencies that I keep seeing in the way that we play and in the way that some of his selection or some of his substitution or tactics has been questionable sometimes. But then you got to look at the personnel as well. It's not all on him, you got to look at the personnel. Does he have enough? And like we said earlier on, it's so hard to manage a football game. I've been a coach at a very, very low level before, and when you got 6 kids that can't play football, but you got 5-star players, you're going to lose more games than you win. It's just how football is at
You
any
said
level.
about just let me pick you up on one of the points you said, and then I'll let you go again. You said about stemming the bleeding and like Arteta's not been able to heal the wounds, right? So the devil's advocate to my point of view is that we sack Arteta now. We say, no, it's not working, mate. We're going to get someone else in. We get someone else in. I mean, I don't know who. I don't know who that's going to be, and I don't know if we've got the trust in the ownership to actually get the right person in anyway.
That's a problem.
We get someone else in. What is it that you think that Arteta's not done, or what another coach could do that then heals that wound? What is it that I'm missing that I can't quite see at the moment?
First of all, experience is something that a lot of people use loosely, but it's a nuance in. It's still a nuance in the game, and knowing how to react and how to handle the game when the game is going in a certain way. The ability to draw big players. Like for me, one of my bugbears over the last few weeks when they've been talking about Haaland, we're not involved in that bloody conversation. Like, why are we not? And these are the little things that I think maybe with a big man. And look, I know we can't look at other clubs and try and do what they're doing, but a lot has been made about, oh yeah, we want to kind of do what Liverpool did. Look what Liverpool went through, and look how they came through it. They went through a plan, brought Klopp in, and they followed through the plan. Look, I really want to, go through that type of blueprint, but you need a manager that's done it before at the highest level. And Klopp, I've done it before at the highest level in Germany with big clubs competing with the likes of Bayern Munich and those type of clubs over there. So for me, Arteta is still new in the game. He's learning as he's going. Look at what Chelsea done. Like I said, we can't just look at other clubs, but sometimes you got to look at what your neighbors are doing. And it doesn't help that Chelsea go and get rid of Lampard when they were just as bad as we were, and all of a sudden they bring in Tuchel. He's only lost 1 game.
Do you not think that's because Lampard's, like, you look at 200 million quid spent by Chelsea, right, on Havertz, Werner, on all of these players. Do you not think that Lampard was doing so poorly with that team? Like, it's not. I don't think Chelsea fans would sit here and get rid of most of that lineup that Lampard was using because they knew what was available to him. So Tuchel just came in. He was a better coach than
again, which is part of what I said earlier on with experience. Like, experience is a nuance,
Okay.
It's
yeah.
And that's the point I was trying to allude to with just having the experience. Even though you bring in all these players, maybe a more experienced manager would have been able to do better with that team than what Lampard did. But Lampard ain't got that much experience. Well, he only managed Derby before he had the big job like Chelsea, and that's the thing. But we ain't got a trigger happy owner like Chelsea does. So they've seen enough for Lampard and for, you know what, you gotta go. But we've got a bit more patience, and obviously that's a blessing and that's a curse at the same time, because not being able to pull the trigger means you let the rot fester like it did, and we had to get rid of all these guys that we've kind of held on to, in January, and that's the problem we're facing at the moment. I think if Arteta, I've always said this, I didn't want us to be in Europe going into this season. I really didn't, and that FA Cup was a blessing and a curse in that way, because I believe we would have seen, maybe it would have given Arteta a little bit more room to adjust to being a manager and managing a big club like Arsenal, just playing domestic games this season. It looks like he's probably going to end up doing that next season, but I would have preferred to have that this season, build ourselves up into Europe by the league, rather than trying to win Europa League, a one-off kind of cup competition to try and get into Europe. Because I just think if we do that, we're going to end up in Europe, and we're not even ready to be in Europe. But getting in it by the league, you've got some form of consistency to try and go into Europe and compete. So, that's how I see it.
John, I feel like you're on the edge of your seat.
Well, I mean, I agree a lot of that. I just think there's also a counter argument that you can't avoid, is that why, if we had a manager who is a little bit more, the counter argument is why are we getting a manager that needs time to figure out how to be a manager and not fight on two fronts in Europe and in the league? And that's kind of what Tom's getting at about experience. Having a manager who, and that's the big concern, right? Is that maybe Arteta just is not able to fight on both of those fronts, which is why you wanted to give him a year. And I want Arteta to do well. That's the thing here. And I think a lot of our Arsenal fans, some of them don't, but the ones that I talk to a lot, we all want Arteta to do well.
I still want him to do well. I want him to succeed.
We want, of course, he was the captain. He was a Arsenal player. He's this young, bright manager, and he's.
I don't care who he is. I just want us to succeed. That's
well, hold on, but there's both, because that's obvious. I mean, that one that's a low hanging fruit. But I'd like us to see with anyone, even someone like Mourinho, if he came in here and we won the Champions League or we won the league, like I wouldn't care. At the end of the day, but part of me would. And we don't have that with Arteta. I think that a lot of us want him to succeed, but just liking him as a person isn't enough. You actually have to see results. And when you hear statements like, maybe, we shouldn't have been in Europe because he would have been able to learn how to be a manager a little bit better. Not saying that that's not true, but it is kind of the counter argument that people make as to, well, why should we be in that position? Shouldn't we get someone who's ready to take the mantle, to go fight in Europe and in the league, and to actually get tangible progress moving forward? Because guess what? We were in Europe, and now we're not in Europe. We were fifth when Emery last left us, teetering on eighth. We were eighth last season. If we finish 10th this season, that's all downhill stuff. Does that mean that he should go right now? No, because I personally want to see what I'm with you. I want to see what the ownership will do over the summer. Because look, because Arteta hasn't been really one that seems that he's just going to blow smoke. So if he's getting assurances that he's going to be backed by the ownership, there's an onus on them. If we start getting all of this lip service, if things don't get done in the summer that need to be done, and it's like, oh, well, it didn't work out, and we had all these plans, and this is just the way that football is sometimes, and sometimes you don't get the deals you need done, and all this crap, like, then there's a real issue, and it's a real dialogue about like the veracity of what anything that the manager was told or not, as to what he's going to get in terms of backing from the ownership. And that would be a really sad day if that's the case, because and ultimately I want to see that play out. And it's an intellectual curiosity on my part. I want to see how this summer plays out. I want to see an Arteta squad that he can look at and replace the way that he, get backing from the ownership. So we can look at his squad and say, this is what in my head, this is what I wanted to see on the pitch, and see how that works. If it doesn't work, fine, but I don't think that I see the argument for wanting to get rid of him now. And I think there's merit to it, especially if we're out of Europe next season, if we don't win the Europa League and we finish lower than we did last season. I mean, clearly that's not progress. And, I can get that argument, but I personally want to give him the summer. I want to see what he can do with the squad and start the season off. Remember, we started last season with our striker. Basically, who could have expected that? Who could have expected Aubameyang to have the form that he did in the beginning of the season? A Tierney injury early on. Like these things that would have given us momentum going in the season, we constantly had to fight back. And it was a manager learning what he was doing. So we can make all these arguments of what we should have done. It's irrelevant. We already did it. It's in the past. Let's see if we can move on and see if that he'll get the resources that he needs and see what that looks like. You got to be as curious as I am to see what an Arteta team that's actually what he actually wants on a football pitch actually materialize. Because what this surely isn't it. I hope it's not it. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, me too. I get the merit. I understand the merit behind the wanting him out. Like I don't agree with that view. And I know Ollie, you're Arteta out, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. Like I don't think that wanting Arteta out is what I describe as a stupid opinion. It's not, because Arteta is not perfect. Like, right. He has made mistakes. He's done things that's frustrated the hell out of me this season. He's made team selections which I think have costed us matches and costed performances, like yesterday. He is not perfect. And that's why the argument to say that, and the opinion that he should go, is not something I can go, well, that's stupid. What are you talking about? Because it's not. Because there is merit and there is evidence to suggest that that you can have that view. The issue I've got is that when people turn around and say that they can't see anything, that they can't see nothing, that there is no evidence at all that it's worth keeping it for another year. That's what I get frustrated with. And they're like, nah, not good enough. This is not like, it's just, that's what gets to me the most. And this whole thing about, and you talked about, and I mean, Ollie, you said experience is a nuance, that side of things. I think experience is one of the most overrated qualities in football. Like, it is, for me, one of the most overrated qualities, because if that was the case, like, you would just see the top teams go out and get in just like all the time, someone who has obviously gone out and done everything and is like 60, 70 years old and done all of this. But that's not the case, because sometimes coaches like Thomas Tuchel is still a young coach. Like, he's gone to PSG, he's been at Dortmund, he's still a young guy as a coach. And I know that Arteta has not done loads, and I understand that. But there is no, exactly. And
that's the argument, though, isn't it? That he has never actually managed a first team in his life.
Yeah, and that's obviously the difference in that experience. Like Man United going and getting Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and obviously Chelsea with Lampard, and Lampard got them obviously into the Champions League with no transfer budget at all. Whatever. That's what I don't get around this whole idea of the experience. I just think it's a very overrated, because like West Ham go and get Manuel Pellegrini in between the two David Moyes stints, and they were dreadful. They were terrible. Absolutely dreadful. And that's the thing, is people go, oh, like we need someone with loads of all of this and all of that. And it's the case, like, what do you want? Do you want Sam Allardyce because he's got loads of experience and stuff like this? This is what I get, is that I think it's just too broad of a term. I understand the theory. I understand the point of saying we need someone that has shown that he's got more from players, that he improves teams. I get that. And Ola, I want to give you a chance to come back on this. So just hammer me into the ground, son. Come on.
No, I mean, look, this is why I didn't. It's not so much of an overriding part of selecting the manager. It's why I put it down to a nuance, because it's still a part of what you need going forward. I mean, even mentioning people like Sam Allardyce, like you just did earlier on, these are experienced managers in a certain. They're relegation managers. They know how to deal with relegation battles. That's their expertise. They are experienced in that. Like, imagine, look what happened with Shearer at Newcastle. And the year they went down, Shearer had no experience. Then they bring somebody else in that sort of situation, and they stay up. So it's the same thing with West Ham. A lot of times that we've seen these people like Steve Bruce, people like Roy Hodgson, people like Sam Allardyce. They just come from out of no, being out of a job for like half a season, quarter of a season. The season is about to be done. It looks like some of these clubs are going to go down, and they go and get these managers in, and in the end, lo and behold, a lot of these teams stay up, and that's just down to the experience. But like I said, for me, it's a nuance. It's never an overriding thing, but it's still part of what you need to. I was looking at Arteta's amount of games that is managing the Premier. He's only managed 50 games. That's young. He's only managed 50 Premier League games. That's as young. He's still learning his trade, and he's learning on the fly. You can see sometimes I think to myself, did you even learn from the last mistake? Considering that early minute goal to Villa, and ultimately that was what sealed the 3 points for them. We did exactly the same thing against Man City. Considered in the first minute, they didn't get another sniff. They went with it, with the 1-0 and got 3 points. And it just comes to always prang in my head like, look, have we actually learned anything from? Is this manager learning anything? But then some other times you look at, and it does come out with some good performances. So, and that's why I still think the players are on his side. I just think his preferred personnel when available to him in yesterday's game, and I think the people that were selected should have given him more. But how much would another manager say we bring in an Allegri, watches the team, and in a big game like Liverpool, could they rally them up to try and get a result against somebody like because
the Allegri thing, like, I get it. Like, I understand he's won things with Juventus, he'd won things with AC Milan, but he's been at those clubs at periods where they're on the top of their game. They had an amazing squad, amazing players. Arsenal aren't that. Like, Arsenal aren't a squad with an amazing players. We've got a few decent ones, but as we talked about earlier, I'd get rid of most of them. Like, this is the thing, is that I want a coach that's going to come in and that has shown that with a poor squad, he's got a hell of a lot more out of them. Like, this is like the Ancelotti thing and where else he's gone. And even at Everton, he's gone out and he's signed prime players last summer, like Decore and Alan and James Rodriguez, that are going to come in and have an immediate impact on the team. And even then, they've had some poor performances, and I think towards the end of the season, we're still probably going to see a drop-off, and we'll see where they are. There is one coach I look at in the league that I think that's doing really well with the squad that he's got. But even then, I think the squad's amazing. It's Brendan Rodgers, like at Leicester. I think that Leicester have recruited over the last 5 years amazingly well, and that has helped the coaches that they have had. I feel like this is why the main thing that what comes around about seeing Arteta is I just want to see in a year's time, after hopefully, and this is all on the caveat that he's backed. It's all on that, and it's all going to be on that. And I'm going to get so angry if we don't back him this summer. I really will, because it'll be all for nothing.
If they don't back him, it's criminal.
Exactly. Right, John, I know you wanted to say a point, and then we are going to go to the chat box for user questions, and I'm stealing that term off Mike indefinitely now. So user questions in the chat. If you've got one for the guys and myself, please throw them into the chat box. Use the capital Q in the chat so we can help them stand out. I'll also put a prompt in there now, but go ahead, Johnny boy.
Well, actually, that's exactly the point I was going to make about wanting to back. And I kind of alluded to it earlier that I want to see what Arteta will do when he's actually given a squad that he has. So you actually kind of nailed the point that I was going to make. One other thing I was going to say, just in terms of like considerations, including experience, which is something that people throw around, wanting experience, which is a valid point, is this notion of progress. And it really is a weird concept because I think you could define it very differently, and it's right at the crux. It's right at the center of the discussion about whether you keep or get rid of Arteta. Has there been progress? And it really comes down to how you define progress. If progress is league table finishing, then finishing 10th when we finished 8th last season is not progress. It's the opposite. If not winning a trophy when last season we did win a trophy is not progress, the opposite. That's one way of looking at it. If being out of Europe instead of being in Europe is considered anti-progress, then that's one way to consider it. So there's all these different ways of looking at progress. If you're going to use it as a benchmark or as a litmus test to determine whether Arteta should continue going forward. I think there's a lot of things that you need to look at as well, like performances on the pitch. We still have these kind of performances, which is that showing progress, maybe defensively, but the attack is still stagnant. We're not getting the best out of some players. Aubameyang has been disappeared. So I see this notion of progress and experience, and all of these are intermingled, and it's kind of a very diverse conversation. And I don't know if there's really an answer yet. So that's why I'm willing to kind of let it play out, because, you know, I have the emotional stability to handle it if we need to deal with it. I know a lot of people out there, just being on football Twitter, might not have that, and I get it. I get why maybe there's like,
you know what football Twitter is, right, John?
Yeah, there might be an impetus to, you know, to get it done now and fix everything right now because we can't take it anymore. I get it. So yeah, I guess that's all I'm saying. There's these notions of progress and these notions of experience are intertwined, and there's different ways of looking at it. So that's just something to keep in mind when we're analyzing what if we should use progress as a benchmark for Arteta.
And you could also look at progress as the deadwood that we had last season. Have we still got them at the club this season? Which is
how many do we move out? Like the players that like we're moaning about. Does he get rid of those guys? Is he going to get rid of one of Lacazette or Aubameyang? Is he going to get rid of a centre back? Is he going to give Luiz a new contract? Is he going to try and sign a better goalkeeper? And I mean, not even a backup. Is he going to get someone to compete with Leno? Is he going to sign a backup left back? Is he going to get rid of Hector Bellerin? Is he going to get a better centre midfielder?
Right. And just think, and if you want to talk about like just to show how slippery progress can get as a conversation, Emery was 1 point off top four and got to a European final with Guendouzi, Xhaka in the midfield, Mustafi in the back, Socrates, Ramsey. Well, Ramsey was amazing, but
that's what I was pointing out.
We get players, and Aubameyang was scoring a lot for him. So, but you see, it like when you say progress, like you have to define it. And it gets a little weird when you try to do that, especially when you're trying to figure out whether to use it as a benchmark for success.
Yeah, I mean, just before we go on to questions, I was looking at that season because I just reminded me like of why we finished 1 point off top four. Like the other teams in that league season are it's so funny. Leicester finished 9th, and lost 16 games. Everton finished 8th, lost 14 games. Wolves finished 7th, lost 13 games. We lost 10 across the whole season, which I know we'd love to have only lost 10 this season. But I do think that we're in a worse situation now and the teams around us are much better. West Ham finished 10th on 52 points, same as Leicester. Aston Villa weren't even in the league at this point. That shows you how far they've come.
Yeah, and it really makes you think, can you ever really make a comparison to past seasons? Every season has to be taken by case-by-case basis. And you can't. And so this notion of progress becomes very, very muddy when you start thinking like that, because what are you progressing like in relation to? Like a season it's totally different. I'm sorry, I'm getting too philosophical here.
No, it's fine. Let's crack on with the questions. We've got 22 minutes left of the show. So let's get through as many of these feasibly possible. We're going to try and get through as many because the boys are going to keep their answers composed and conservative and brief. And we'll get through as many as we can. So, Ola, starting with you, mate. MIL Reaction says, maybe we should take the Bayern route, meaning that we buy star players from lesser clubs in the league. What do you think about that?
I mean, we're not in the position to do that. We used to be in the position to do that. But we're amongst the lesser teams at the
There's
moment.
There's only 10 of those now.
You know what I mean? The window to buy those is now. They used to be exactly, you know. So we used to be in a position to do that, but a lot of these teams are going to big time us now, and what's the possibility of a club like us now signing Jack Grealish? You know, it's crazy, but maybe 8-10 years ago we might have been able to pull it off, but in this current climate, very, very difficult.
MAO, I will say, I think you're on the right path, mate. I think your theory is sound, and we should do that. And we should be savvy with our signings. I think it's something that we've not done over the last 5 years. That's 5 to 10 years. That's really, really cost us in the league. So yeah, I think you're on the right route. It's just how we execute that and how realistic it is. Daniel Roberts says, if we win the Europa League, will we be ready for the Champions League? I don't want us to fall off in the group stage or the round of 16.
No, we won't be ready, but it depends what we do in the summer. But it doesn't matter. I don't care.
We just need to be in it. Like,
yeah. And it's not just like I want to see. I'm sick of hearing the Europa theme song, which I am. It's more because there was a time where I was like, okay, we're not the Champions League gets kind of boring. We get knocked out by Barcelona and Bayern Munich every year. What's the point? But when you start looking at like the financial situation, and I don't really, it's not my bank account that's going up or down. Well, it's going down when I keep buying stuff that Arsenal puts out, which is a new kit every week. But yeah. In the sense of like my bottom line is not tied into the Cronkies in that way, right? The reality is that if we want to progress and we want to be able to invest in the squad the way that we're going to need to, if we're going to start pushing for those competitions, like challenging in Champions League, challenging in the league on a more consistent basis, and in any basis right now, we're going to need to be in the Champions League. So are we ready? No, we're not. I don't even know if we're ready for top 4 yet, but here we are and we're trying. It's going to be a question of what can we do in the summer, and that mission of building the squad based off of our goals to get in either the top 4 again or to actually challenge for the league become way easier if we're in the Champions League. So honestly, it doesn't really matter. We just need to get back in there just financially to rebuild the squad and to get into a position where we could start challenging and get our Arsenal back, or however you want to call it.
Yeah. This is a funny one for you, Ola. Matt G says, for Ola, was Black Scorpion 1 and Black Scorpion 2 taken, or are you a 3rd generation Black Scorpion?
I'll
I don't even know.
That's a mad question. That's a mad question. But Black Scorpion 1 and 2 was taken, and that's why I got it. That's why I got number 3. So I went for 1, I went for 2. It didn't happen. I think 3 on it. It worked. So we've kept it since then.
There you go. I'll ask you a better question. Not that
Thank
wasn't
you for that
good,
question,
Matt. That was great. But a more relatable question is the way to say it. It's a really easy one for you, Ola. Richard Noakes says, who would you sign this summer?
Whoa.
I said it was easy.
I want to bring in Edouard from Celtic. I really like him. I like his movement, his tenacity, and and the players that have played in that league. If they're anything like Kieran Tierney, please bring them to my club. If they've got that much passion and all of that, bring them over.
Just remember that Mustafi played in the same league as Messi. Just remember that.
Yeah, but I like the look of Edouard. If I could bring him in, it'd be the one.
Sound. It's a good shout. We've covered him on the show a number of times. Alex McCarthy, I'll take this one quickly and then we'll go for another one. Alex says, does Arteta know what he has to do in the summer? If he does and fails, then Mikel know he's gone. I think that he does know what he needs to do. I think that he said already, he said that he needs 5-6 players to get where he wants to kind of get this team moving. He says the plan's done. They said that they know what they want to do. So if we're stuttering and stalling and we're waiting until the end of the summer to pull off a buyout clause for Thomas Partey type signing, then I don't really get, if we are at that stage, we should get business done quick, we should get it done early, and we should get it done well at the start of this window. There should be no excuses towards the end of the window. I get maybe pick up a couple of decent deals if some become available, because some players only become available at certain stages throughout the window, but I think we just need to be as competent as we can be, and hopefully he can enact that plan. Neptune says, if we don't make Europe, what is next for this club? Because the Cronkies aren't going to back us.
Well, it becomes very much more difficult to enact any kind of plan. They're going to need to be very, very shrewd with transfers, with potential loans. Maybe we'll start seeing some of the youth players kind of feature a little bit more. Hopefully someone can make a break. It becomes more difficult and look, the last part of this question, because the Cronkies won't back us. I don't know if that's necessarily true. We have spent money. It hasn't been very great return on it. I mean, we you could look at Pepe. Aubameyang was a big deal. We've made some shrewd signings. Kieran Tierney was an amazing signing. Gabriel looks like Martinelli. Gabriel. These are, there's been a trend of decent signings. They sure cleared out what needed to be cleared out over the summer with Mesut Ozil, with Socrates, with Mustafi. All of these moves were really, really good. Now it's a question of, are they going to take that next step? If we don't make Europe, it's a lot more difficult, but it's not impossible. It could happen, and they just need to be a little bit smarter with it. If the money's there, the player is going to come most of the time, I believe. Obviously there's certain exceptions to that. You look at players like Haaland, he's not going to want to come to a club where they're not in Europe because he wants to play at the top level. But then again, if you pay enough, not that we're ever going to pay that amount of money that would offset him wanting to be in Europe.
His ringtone's the Champions League anthem, mate. He's not coming.
But I mean, it depends how much you give him. Let's be real.
Did you see the breakdown today about how much he wants? Have you seen it?
How much does he want?
So, the agent breakdown is that Mino Raiola takes 20 million euros, Alfinger Haaland takes 20 million euros, and Haaland takes 30 million euros per season, and that's before you even get to the transfer fee. That's the levels that we're talking.
So money will talk. At the end of the day, he's going to play football and he's going to make a lot of money. Sure, he's going to want to play in the Champions League and all that stuff. But if the dollar's right, we're not going to do it. All right, this is completely mental.
I don't know why we're talking about it.
I'm just saying. No, if we make Europe. If we don't make Europe, it's not necessarily the end of the days. We're just going to have to pay a little bit of a premium on certain players, and the alternative, we're just going to have to be very, very shrewd with how we conduct business and rely more than we might want to on the youth players that we have, things like that. So that being said, there is the added benefit of, like Ola was kind of alluding to earlier, being able to focus on one tournament, which is the league, and trying to get in the top four. But as we see with the rest of the league, that's never a guarantee. And going in there with one hand tied behind your back, yes, there's been some good transfers we've had, but on the whole, have we really, it's questionable.
Pablo Mira, one of our fantastic members, says, if a club came in for Saka with £100 million, would you take it so we can build on our squad?
Wow. I was having this conversation earlier on. I've tried to desensitize myself from having this crazy tie-up with these players because they can get up and go at any time. So if a good offer like that comes in, it would be crazy not to take it. Especially if it's one of those where you can put your foot down like the Sancho deal and say, you know what? I want all the 100 million in one go. If you ain't got it, go away. I don't want to talk to you. That's what Dortmund has been doing for so long. They get all these fantastic players, and if you got the money, pay all the money up front, come and get him, or wait till he's a free signing, and Bayern Munich could just pluck him off. So it's kind of been like that, but. I think it's a system that we're gonna have to look at. But that's if we get an offer like that for Saka, and if we get that offer, I'll take it if they're paying cash up front.
Wow. I suppose if it's up front, it makes it tougher. I would really struggle with it. I think because I think there's a world-class talent there. £100 million. I mean, what kind of 100 million? It can't buy you Haaland. It can't buy you Haaland.
We gave Gnabry away for free. I would take 100 million for Saka.
Yeah, it's true. Maybe learn from your mistake. Manny Clerks says Arteta was never going to get sacked in his first 2.5 years. As long as we don't get relegated, he's fine, which is a wonderful sentence. Is there a team in history like us and Milan who successfully rebuilded a squad of this size? Which I kind of really like this question, and I was thinking a little bit about it while Ola was talking. Now, I don't think that they're of the same historical size as Arsenal, but they're certainly a big club. You look at Aston Villa, for example, relegated not so long ago after being continuously in the Premier League, a team that have won a European trophy. And obviously over the last year and a bit, they fought off relegation last season again after coming up, and have then invested smartly and brought in good players and have progressed further up the table. And you expect, and that's through a lot of backing, by the way. They're one of the highest spending clubs in Europe, not just the Premier League now. And that's the difference, is that, yes, you can rebuild these teams, these sleeping giants, if you want to call them that, but it takes money, and it takes a lot of it, and it takes it being spent well. Whilst Arsenal may have spent well in terms of how much they have spent, they've spent a hell of a lot recently, but it's how that money is spent, and it's what you do with that money and where it goes. But I'd say Aston Villa, maybe not, they're not on the same level in terms of size as Arsenal, but they're a big, big club. of European pedigree, and they are rebuilding by spending a lot of money. Milan is obviously the example, Manu, that you bring up. Is another good example that have got themselves kind of back challenging for the first 2/3 of the season, you would say. It's tough to think of other sides that have really kind of dropped off the map in the same way. I mean, you may look at like Schalke this season. Are they going to be able to rebuild after what's happened to them? It's going to be really tough for those guys. You look at Borussia Mönchengladbach, have got themselves back into the Champions League. Back in the day, they used to be a very, very big club in Germany. So it is possible, but it takes, in the Premier League, it takes a hell of a lot of money. And that's what the difference is for us. Let's scroll down. El Batch says, John, what do you think is Arteta's biggest flaw? For me, it's his team selection.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think he doesn't know what his best side is, if there is even one right now. And I think part of that is experience in battling on multiple fronts and multiple competitions, dealing with injuries and being able to kind of utilize what he has in a way that's effective. Sometimes he does it, sometimes he doesn't. If he could do it more consistently, we'd be in a better position. And part of that is the personnel he has available. I think that he tries to make do with what he has. I don't think he does it right 50% of the time. Maybe a little bit. Maybe he does it right more than 50%. That's pretty bad, saying that he gets it right it feels like he gets it right 50% of the time, which is why I'm agreeing with this with his assessment in this question. It's that, I think that part of it has to do with the tactics that he's utilizing, and that ties in with the personnel he has. So it's not necessarily a flaw of his. It's he might be a victim of circumstance in certain points, but there's definitely cases where you're just scratching your head going, what are you doing? And that hopefully gets better.
There was a question about, I just want to pick up on a super chat as well that's come in. But there was a comment basically saying that we need to sign Premier League. Here we go. Alex McCarthy says we should primarily focus on signing Premier League players moving forward under 30 years of age. Do you agree or disagree? And the super chat that came in from Callum Crichton, thank you ever so much, man. I really, really appreciate the support. Says, no, we need good homegrown players. They are hard to come by. And obviously, we've seen one of our homegrown players score today against Spurs. It was glorious. It saved Easter Sunday for many Arsenal fans. So we really appreciate you, Joe. We much appreciate that, mate. Thank you for saving Sunday. But yeah, there was a few more questions. Let's see if we can find the one I wanted to find for Ola. Here we go. Yo-Yo says, has Arteta shown enough to show his superiors that he deserves greater funding if he fails to qualify for European football this season?
On results, no. I don't think he's shown enough on results. I think we've been so inconsistent this season, but we've also highlighted the problems in the pod when we said earlier on about the amount of passengers that we're carrying every week in, week out, and it's a difficult thing to do to carry that many players through a game and expect to get consistent result week in, week out. It doesn't help that Arteta was sticking with certain players earlier on in the season that weren't really, doing the job for him, and we kept losing points, i.e. Willian. But it's learning in that regard, because Ronaldson messed up, dropped him. Willian messed up, dropped him. So, but he needs to show the same energy for Aubameyang, because you can't keep, especially putting him on the left. You can't keep doing that week in, week out when it's not working. Like I said, maybe take him off the bench and then bring him on and let him run at certain players, or especially depending on what games we play, horses for courses and all of that. But for me, I still think he needs to show a bit more. Winning the Europa League is really going to help him get that funding, the full backing. If what he says is true, that the owners really, really want to back him, I think we saw winning the FA Cup got him, which was Partey and Gabriel. What could he get winning the Europa League and getting us into Champions League? I think the funding will be there for him. If he doesn't win it, then like John said earlier on, John already alluded to, we're gonna have to be shrewd, because he might not get that much funding from the owners if he doesn't win the Europa League or get us into top four. So yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to Peter Marutu, who says, Tom, how can we be successful with this self-sustaining model with a manager like Arteta? I read this question because I think it's actually ironic, because I think Arteta is the first coach where I've actually had a little bit of hope that under a self-sustaining model we can actually achieve something, because he's the first coach of the three in the last decade that actually during the transfer windows is doing some good stuff. With the money that we've got available to me. Like, I know it's not perfect, and you've got Willian, Runnison, for instance, but I think actually what we're actually spending the bulk of our money on, being Partey and Gabriel last summer, I think it'll work. I think it can work. So next summer is, yes, we need to spend. Yes, we need to sell really well and get rid of a lot of the players that Ola was talking about earlier on as well. We need to make sure we continue that trend of moving on the players that are not good enough to stay at the club. But I actually think that Arteta is, ironically, of the three, the better coach under the self-sustaining model. Callum, thank you so much for the super chat again, mate. It says, Tom, what are your thoughts on Alba right now? He looks like he doesn't want to be here. Also, they have they have to back him or we won't improve. It's a must. I mean, John, I'll throw this to you, mate. Aubameyang, it's a tough situation with him. Do you think because we've given him this new deal, of course, so he's going to be here. I don't see us selling. I don't see anyone coming in for him. So how do you manage him?
So I guess I'll take these. I'll keep the how do you manage him question in the back of my head, and I'll kind of take these in reverse order. So they have to back him, meaning Arteta or Aubameyang?
I think they mean like the coach. I think they have to back him, as in like they have to keep playing him. But he could mean we have to back Arteta, otherwise we're not going to improve the squad. So
well, I agree with having to back Arteta from up top and giving him the players that he wants, and hopefully the kind of luck of the summer will kind of be in our favor. So that I agree. I don't think you need to play this notion that you have to play a player is, I don't think, a real one. I think if you're not performing, I believe in a meritocracy when it comes to a football pitch. That yes, there's a certain degree of diminishing returns with a player that you can just keep playing them and playing them and playing them, and you get this idea that maybe their confidence comes back, but it also might be compounding their frustration so that it doesn't help, and maybe being on the sidelines a little might help. So I don't, I trust someone who is tasked to being the manager of a football club to know that more than anyone else. So if he's playing him, there's a reason for that, in my opinion. I don't know if it's the right reason. And I don't know if we'll ever really know that. Now, in terms of whether Aubameyang can be managed, I don't think there's anything but the recent stories that he was late to practice and whatever, all that crap that came out to suggest that he can't be managed. Obviously there's that talk when he was coming out of Borussia Dortmund, but we haven't really seen that at Arsenal. He's always seemed to be a pretty likable guy. He's always seemed to be one that's willing to do, there hasn't been any stories that he's not training well or this or that. Yeah, he shows up late. He drives up fancy cars and all that fun stuff. But, at the end of the day, you got to really look at it as, is he performing? And if he's not, why is he still playing week in and week out? Are we trying to play him back into form? Because that doesn't seem to be working. And guess what? We've been doing that all season. Something happened. Either the pressure was too much, or he didn't like, he was told one thing and something else happened. This season has been abysmal for Aubameyang since pretty much day one. I don't really know why that is. I don't know if Arteta knows why that is, and I don't know if we'll ever know why that is. But there comes a point in time where there's, like I said, diminishing returns. You got to cut your losses, and you got to move on, because we need a striker that's scoring goals on a more consistent basis. Like that's the end. That's the end of the story, really, in my opinion. And it's annoying to see a player like Kane just left and right scoring goals week in and week out. Like can you imagine
scoring goals, assisting goals, working for the
scoring?
team.
It's ridiculous. And he was talking 4 years ago about wanting trophies. Like, would anyone right now not take Kane over Aubameyang? Of course, you have to be out of your mind not to want to take Kane over Aubameyang right now. Out of your mind. And man, whatever.
Let me ask you, John. Do you think he can rekindle it again? Do you think that fire can come back? Because if you look at Jamie Vardy, only a couple seasons ago under Claude Puel, he was within himself, wasn't performing.
Yeah.
It's like everybody was saying maybe he's too old. Like, there were so many speculations, and all of a sudden change the manager, and look at the Vardy we've had over the last over the last couple seasons since Rodgers has been there.
Yeah, and guess what? We thought we had that. We thought we had that with Aubameyang. Finally, there's this striker that we've been wanting, and it's like we can't have nice things when it comes to a striker ever.
We can't have nice things.
We can't have nice things.
That is so Arsenal, man. It's crazy,
man.
man.
And then, like the second, okay, yes, here we go, finally. And what happens? He's nowhere to be found. He's off the face of the earth. He had one season where he was amazing, and now all of a sudden he's So can he play out of that? I'd like to think that the guy's a talented player. He's a talented striker. Sure, he's getting a little bit older, and maybe this is part of that. But the decline that we've seen from Aubameyang cannot. I refuse to believe it's only because he's getting 2 months older, and all of a sudden it's like a totally different player. Like I don't. Maybe. I mean, it's possible. It's possible, but is it more likely that there's something going on, and that he's lost faith in whatever this is, or his confidence is shaken, and he can't get it back? Like, I don't know. And the manager says everything's fine. We seem to get all these fluff pieces, these PR pieces that he's doing okay. But at a certain point, it almost becomes gaslighting, because we're going, how is everything okay? Like, look at his body language. Look how he's playing. Like, I don't buy it at a certain point. So,
I mean, with that edge, you can't even put it down to confidence no more. With that edge, you need confidence to have that edge. You can't even put it down to confidence no more.
Yeah. And
Aubameyang, he's a problem for me at the moment. He's a real problem player that we've got. I think you have to play him at the striking position. I think you got to play him where he plays best. If you're going to play him, don't play him left wing. It's as simple as that. He's an arrogant player. Yes, he's got an ego. Yes, he adores himself. We know this. But I like that in strikers. I like that in Thierry Henry. That's what made him such an amazing player, was his confidence. So he's a goal scorer. Put him in the position where he's going to be a goal scorer. For me, it's as simple as that. And that's an Arteta.
And sorry, just one more thing, just to say, there's an argument to be made that we're not playing to Aubameyang's strengths, and maybe that could be one of the reasons of his frustration and whatever. So there's something there. So I don't know if we're ever going to do that. And the reality is if the manager has a plan for how we're going to play, it might very well just be that Aubameyang's really not in that plan, which is kind of weird considering we just, started talking about him being a legend and gave him this big contract, and he's a captain and all sorts of.
Oh, that was the worst tagline to a signing video. I want to be a legend.
Yeah, like, well, you're on your way, but like for a weird reason, and not exactly the one that you might have thought. So.
Legendary failure is what it's going to be at the moment. We're going to wrap up there. Just very quickly, I want to touch on the last super chat. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate the question. I will answer it for you. Have we all been blinded by past glories to the point where we can't see how far the club has fallen off? Top six is going to be a struggle next year. I think there's a proportion of people who probably have and are very much still like in the mindset of Arsenal is this amazing club, this invincible team. You get real. Because that's not the situation that we are in.
By that at all. We're a big club, but we're not a big team.
Tom, you're getting a little pushback in the chat. I don't think people think that you meant. Yeah, people think that you were. I think calling Aubameyang a failure, and I don't think that that's what you're doing. I think if I heard you right, really it's just that if he's going to be a legend, like it's not going to be the reasons. If he keeps playing the way he is, like he did at Liverpool. And he doesn't get any better, like that's a big issue. Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your super chat.
No, it's fine. But feel free to defend me anytime you like, John.
Oh, yeah,
that's absolutely fine, mate. I'd like to thank my fantastic panel chat box. Please tell John and Ola how fantastic they have been in the chat box this evening, because they've been brilliant. Ola, always a pleasure to have you on, my friend.
And we were
talking the other day. We are in desperate need to share a beer together and head down to Roosters.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, we say that. I first off was getting the chicken wrap, but their lamb wrap is, I'm sorry, it's on another level.
It's ridiculous.
No, John, when you're over, you will find out
Roosters.
Yes,
right.
We're taking John to Roosters. That's what we're going to do.
It will be visiting.
What is that?
It's a chicken shop basically, but it's.
I'm down. That's all I need to know. I'm good.
It's basically next to the 12 pins where you go.
Right next to the 12 pins. You go there, eat, soak it up, get drunk, go back, eat some more, soak it up. Yeah, but it's fun.
I've been to the 12 pins, but I don't really remember much about being to the 12 pins.
That is the 12 pins. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, you've had a good night.
That's when you know you've been to the 12 pins, because you don't know you've been. So you must have been. because it's
I generally forget about trains when I'm at the 12 pins.
Oh yeah, that story, man. God, yes. So just in short, before we wrap up, I mean, Ola was meant to get a train home. It ended up missing his last train and had to stay at Andy's, of course, who you all know from the Gooners pod when he was over. But yeah, there's a thing about us staying over at the Gooners pod places. I stayed in Highbury when Mike rented out a flat in Highbury because I couldn't get back one night. There's a thing happening. It's fantastic. John, appreciate your time, mate, as always.
Yeah, it was great. It was a nice little therapy session after that game, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, 100%. You can make sure you can find Ola at Black Scorpion 3, and you can find John at 305cast on Twitter. You can find ourselves at the Goon Talk TV and me at Tom Canton Media, and you can find all of our writing at 101 Great Goals as well. We will be back tomorrow for a discussion show around a topic of a topic I'm going to be pissed off about, basically, and just want to talk about. So that's what it's going to be. And then on Tuesday, I'll be back at 5 p.m. as usual for Let's Talk Arsenal. In fact, I can tell you who I'm going to be on with on Tuesday by checking my very organised Google Sheets schedule. I'm going to be on with Craig from the Same Old Arsenal. So me and Craig are going to be having a chat on Tuesday. So make sure you tune in. And then the next podcast, I'm joined by Mike, Wayne, and French. So it's going to be a very good show next week as well. But again, massive thank you to John and Ola, as always. Make sure you drop a like on the video if you enjoyed it this evening. And of course, subscribe to our channel and, of course, their Twitter accounts and the Miami podcast, because John's going to make an episode this week. I promise you. There's one coming out, mate. There's one coming out. You'll see it soon. I've committed to him now. We'll see you again very, very soon. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always. And as always, up the Arsenal.